A war of narratives has erupted around the Pakistan train hijacking. The Pakistan army, after being mysteriously quiet for the last 48 hours, has suddenly responded, claiming that the siege is over. They have also claimed that 33 militants of the BLA have been killed and all hostages have been freed. But the Baloch Liberation Army that actually took the train, the Jaffar Express that plies between Peshawar and Quetta hostage, have said that the Pakistan army is lying. This as the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif visits Balochistan and Pakistan revives the same old tired tropes of blaming, yes, India and Afghanistan. I'm Barkha. You're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today continues to be on the fallout, the geopolitical fallout and the domestic fallout for the Pakistan army in Pakistan. These stunning images that the world saw and that you're seeing on your screen at the moment when militants of the BLA, the Baloch Liberation Army, were able to take control of the Jaffar Express that plies between Peshawar and Quetta. Remember, this was the suicide squad of the BLA, the Majid division as it's called. And what followed next depends on who you're getting your information from. The Pakistan army today has said that the siege is over. It lasted for 30 hours. They say all hostages have been freed. The BLA says that women, children, and civilians from Balochistan were in fact released and there was no elaborate rescue operation. There are conflicting reports. Details continue to be hazy, but the Pakistani Prime Minister is in Balochistan today. Meanwhile, the former Chief Minister of Balochistan, Sardar Akhtar Mengal, speaking to me here at the Mojo Story, said, unless Pakistan drops a nuclear bomb on the people of Balochistan, it is no longer possible for Pakistan to control the will and the aspirations of the people of Balochistan. He also said not an inch of Balochistan is in the control of the Pakistani government anymore. But after this train hijack, he expects a widespread military crackdown that he says will target innocent civilians. The impact on India-Pakistan relations already in cold freeze is also being felt. Pakistan's Foreign Office, in a briefing today, linked the BLA to Afghanistan, but also pointed a tired old cliched finger at India after the massive failure of the Pakistan military in Balochistan. To discuss the implications of what we're seeing unfold, and remember, there are many implications. First of all, China. Many Chinese projects have been targeted by the BLA, and the BLA is now showing its strength. How will China respond is only one of the many questions that are thrown up by this turn of events. Joining me now is veteran diplomat, Ambassador TCA Raghavan, who's also been India's High Commissioner to Pakistan. Welcome to the program, sir. Military veteran, General Atta Hasnain, who's been General Officer Commanding of the 15th Corps, is with us. Always a pleasure, sir. And also welcoming back to the program is Hakeem Baloch. Hakeem, of course, is the spokesperson for the National Baloch Movement. Welcome back, Hakeem, to the program. And I also see Dr. Qamar Cheema, well-known Pakistani journalist, joining us. Good to see you, Dr. Qamar Cheema. Welcome to the program. All right, let me start by getting first comments from you, Ambassador Raghavan. We are seeing an absolute war of narratives. In fact, sitting here, one's understanding of what has happened depends on whether you believe the Pakistan Army or the Baloch Liberation Army's press statements, completely differing accounts. But there have also been passenger accounts that have challenged the Pakistan Army's version of events, passengers who themselves have said that they were actually released by the BLA and not, in fact, rescued by the Pakistan military. When you look at this stunning turn of events, the BLA really showing its might, challenging the very writ of the Pakistani state, what immediately goes through your mind, Ambassador Raghavan?
Immediately goes through my mind is that regardless of conflicting and multiple versions about what has happened, this is a very marked escalation in what was already an upstick in terrorist-related acts and terrorist-related incidents in Pakistan over the past 18 months or so. So there's no doubt about it. An occurrence such as this, in which a whole train is hijacked, is extraordinary. For a start, it also points to a certain failure of intelligence that such a large operation, which must have been in the planning for some time, was not anticipated or detected. It shows a certain dysfunctionality of the state apparatus in Balochistan, as also in some other parts of Pakistan, where we have seen what I had earlier said was a marked upstick in terrorist related incidents. The larger point is that this is related to the breakdown or the sharp deterioration in Pakistan Afghanistan relations, and also the fact that there has been a certain ascendancy of different groups, insurgent groups, and terrorist groups which operate in Pakistan after the US withdrawal because of the access they have had to new weaponry and perhaps with that weaponry, other associated equipment. All in all, I think where Pakistan is concerned, it's a very, very serious development.
May I ask you, Ambassador, before I open this up, the Pakistan Foreign Office, after a couple of days of kind of being silent or very restrained in what it was saying, has now linked the BLA to Afghanistan, but has also pointed a finger at India, and that is somewhat typical of Pakistani response. But when I was interviewing Sardar Akhtar Mengal, who was the former Chief Minister of Balochistan, and I said to him that I said, look, your government is going to, or your country's government is going to start talking about the India hand. It's predictable. And he said, look, whatever be the interest of foreign powers in Balochistan, no foreign power asked the Pakistani military to abduct people, to commit the worst kind of human rights violations, the long list of missing people, the complete absence of any basic rights, the complete absence of any political approach. This cannot be blamed on any other country. And this is someone talking from the mainstream of Pakistani politics, not a separatist, right? How should India respond now that this very cliched, typical Pakistani response has come? Do we just ignore it? Do we say, look, we don't even have to deem it necessary to respond to this?
I would think so. Such claims and allegations have been made multiple times, not just in the past 3 or 4 years, but certainly in the last quarter century. These claims were always being made, especially when there was the older architecture in Afghanistan, and then the claim was that the Indians have a free hand to operate in Afghanistan, and which leads to these incidents in Pakistan. So I don't think we should take these claims that seriously. The larger point is that given the current uh, somewhat uh, somewhat low plateau in Pakistan-India relations, such claims will certainly always be made. I think the larger point is that Pakistan should address seriously the concerns which its neighboring countries have, especially with regard to the terrorist groups which pose a threat to the region, and take action accordingly. Because the only way out really is for relations in South Asia as a whole to acquire greater stability, and for the countries concerned to have a certain minimum understanding on these issues.
Well, Hussain, the repercussions are many. India has been long concerned about CPEC, about China's infrastructure area, projects in this area. There has been some suggestion by some experts that after what has happened with the train, China may say, look, tomorrow it could be the Gwadar port. Tomorrow it could be any number of our own engineers. We've seen two Chinese nationals killed on earlier occasion. The Balochistan Liberation Army has targeted these projects, and even they have not hesitated to use suicide bombers. Now there are many repercussions. What, according to you, is the most important one as we watch the situation unfold in India?
Thank you, first of all, Barkha. Thank you for inviting me for this program. And yes, from a military point of view, there's no doubt about it. This is Pakistan's October the 7th. Event which has been designed for escalation, event which has been designed as a reminder to the world, reminder to South Asia, everyone, that they have to take Balochistan and the BLA and all other components much more seriously than what people have taken so far. Personally, I was focusing all this while on the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, looking at the Durand line, looking at the relationships with Afghanistan, etc. I could not really fathom at that time that there was something happening in Balochistan which could be as serious as this. And obviously, the BLA has shown its hand and shown it very strongly. Pakistan has to admit, first of all, its military intelligence failure. It has to admit its inability to conduct operations effectively in Balochistan. I'm told that about 56 such operations have been conducted in the last 6 months, which actually just shows how much the BLA and other elements are active in Balochistan, and we can no longer ignore this. Now, to come to your main question on China. China is obviously watching this very, very carefully. They are not going to comment on it for quite some time. They're going to give Pakistan a chance to go ahead and do whatever they want. After that, some aspects will emerge. To my mind, will probably want Pakistan to take this entire thing much more seriously. I think Pakistan has been concentrating and focusing so far on Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the area of Huram, on the Durand line and the western border, but has not really concentrated enough on Balochistan, and the Chinese would definitely want it. We are aware that China started with 11,000 troops inducted to protect and defend the China-Pakistan economic corridor. I'm not sure what is the strength at the moment, but there could be demands for the Chinese to actually place more PLA troops in Balochistan itself. And that could be very awkward, because then they would become targets for the BLA and other elements, and that could lead to even greater escalation. So China is actually caught between the devil and the deep sea here. If they don't do enough proactively and their elements, their own facilities get targeted, then it will be psychologically not good for the Chinese overall, kind of a reputation. But if they do something, they are going to present themselves as much larger targets. As we have seen here, the BLA has demonstrated a capability which is far beyond what normal terrorist groups can do. So that's the way I would.
So let me, before I come to Dr. Chima, for a Pakistani perspective, let me get Hakeem Baloch here. Hakeem, when we were talking earlier, you contested the Pakistani military version. Now we have a very detailed statement from them. They say that 33 militants of the BLA have been killed and all hostages have been freed. Now we have ourselves played some passenger testimonies where the passengers said कि हमें तो छोड़ा गया था. But this is what the Pakistani military is saying. The BLA is still not accepting this version of events. As far as you can tell, do you accept first that the siege is over? Because the Pakistan army has declared the siege to be over. Do you accept their assertion that all hostages have been freed?
I will just give you an example, which in a way is similar to what is happening at the minute in Balochistan. So you might remember a couple of years ago, Baloch Liberation Army took over the Panjgur and Noshki camp of the Pakistani military. And when they took over those camp, in the very next day, the Pakistani army shared a detailed statement saying that both of the camp were freed from the Baloch Liberation Army. The siege and the operations are over, and turn out to be a blatant lie. 3 days later, they had to use heavy shelling bombardment on their own military camp in Panjgur just to target the Baloch Liberation Army's militant. Now, the interesting thing is Pakistan Army saying they have targeted 33 militants. The victims are saying their militant were over 100 in numbers, and then the hostages which they have freed, which they have released. I'm sure my Pakistani counterpart will bring more onto that. But if they're released, where are they? Where are the over 450 people who were traveling into this Jaffar Express? And as I mentioned yesterday, I'm still very much confident. I have more faith in the statements of Baloch Liberation Army, because the Baloch Liberation Army has challenged the Pakistani state to allow independent journalists to come and visit the area where this operation are being conducted, where all this war is
So
going
what
on
is
at
your
the minute.
information? If you believe that the Pakistan military is lying,
Yes.
what is your information according to you?
So Yes, so the information, according to me, up until this, well, obviously the Baloch Liberation, up until this statement came in, we heard that, there was a war going on till the morning. There was, the shelling was going on, and there was the local journalist who obviously cannot go nearby, but there was some reports that, there were heavy shellings, and there was a war going on from both sides. But I have this now. It can be totally wrong, because at this time you will get some information which you cannot verify. But I'm getting this information that the BLA might have taken a huge number of these hostages somewhere from the train itself, and they might just have left their Majid Brigade unit in the train, to continue this escalation, to fight against the Pakistani army, and to divert them. And that is what we have seen from the statement of Pakistan. And there was something which happened that was very interesting in the Balochistan parliament yesterday. The statement of the Balochistan chief minister, he was in a way, it was a cry. I would say he was trying to be, in a way shouting, but he was trying to not to accept their failure. And they were saying, and they were accepting that the personnel were there, and they said because they were on their holidays, and the soldiers would not be considered as soldiers. But if you look at the point of view of the Baloch Liberation Army, these are the same soldiers who were involved in the operations in Balochistan and killing
So,
the
Hakim
people.
Saab, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
interrupting you because I want to explain to our audience. The Majid Brigade is the suicide squad, as it were, of the Baloch Liberation Army. They are the people who go to die. They don't expect to make it out of an operation like this alive. Your information, you believe, is that some of the soldiers, the security personnel of the Pakistan army, could have been taken hostage by the BLA, who have left the Majid Brigade, which is the suicide bombers, behind to fight. And these are the militants that the Pakistan army is claiming that it has killed. But you question that all the hostages have been rescued. I want to bring in Dr. Kamar Chima at this point. Dr. Chima, the fact is that for the first 2 days, I know that there was a virtual media blackout of this episode in Pakistan. I was calling almost every colleague, friend that I have in Pakistan. They said it's a very sensitive issue. We can't say much about it. The Pakistan military has given its first detailed response today. Firstly, is there an acceptance that this has been a failure, an intelligence failure, that the BLA has shown its might, as it were, or its capacity? And let me not say this as an Indian. Let me quote to you a member of parliament in the Pakistan National Assembly, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, who a few weeks ago said that the situation is so bad that at least 6 districts of Balochistan can declare independence, can declare Azadi. Balochistan hamare haath se nikal gaya. This is Fazlur Rahman, not Barkha. How do you respond?
The first thing is that the Pakistani military did respond yesterday, last night, and where the DJSPR made it very clear that all the terrorists were eliminated. One thing. Secondly, as far as the information is concerned, remember you need to understand the terrain. This is not a terrain where a normal person can go, where the journalist can go. So first, your first and primary job is to eliminate the terrorists, not to take the media on ground and to show them what the military or the law enforcement agencies are doing. This is the second thing. So you obviously have to eliminate the threat, not, and the media doesn't have the capability even to go in those areas, because those are the areas which are far away from the, main cities. So, and, the Balochistan is 43% of Pakistan's population, mostly rugged terrain, there are barren mountains. So obviously the train was passing from that area. Secondly, what responding to Maulana Fazlur Rahman's point of view, there is a clarity from the government of Pakistan, and that clarity is that is there any inch of a land which any militant outfit is controlling? Is there any inch of a land? So what Maulana Fazlur Rahman is saying, he's an opposition leader in outside the game, not in the central government. For he has been into the power for many decades. But remember one thing: is there any inch of a land in Pakistan, either in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or in Balochistan, which is being controlled by the militant organization, or which they can say they're
Dr.
holding?
Chima,
This is
Dr. Chima, Dr. Chima, Sardar Akhtar Mengal, who was speaking to me, and if we have time, we'll play his clip. He was speaking to me, and he said, unless Pakistan drops nuclear bombs, this is game over for Pakistan.
let me
Pakistan may
let me
respond. Pakistan's military may respond with with even more lethal a crackdown, but the Baloch
Yes.
people, he said, will not back down. They will not back
Let me
down,
tell you, he's
and
a
he says this is a mainstream. He's not a separatist. He's not a separatist.
listen.
He's not an
He's
insurgent.
a.
He's
Let
he
me
hasn't
tell.
been a member of parliament. He was the chief minister of Balochistan.
Yes, the problem is that he's a Sardar who has ruled this province for long, and they have been ruling this province for long. And remember, all the law enforcement and navies basically they are in the control of these Sardars. The 90% of the budget is going to these levies, which are the community policing established by these Sardars. They don't let anyone come in. They have their own fiefdoms here, and they still want to run these areas like their own fiefdoms. But having said all that, I want to make a point. And my point is right now, I think there needs to be a regional approach. There is a selfish attitude of China and India where they are looking Pakistan, where the terrorist organizations hiding in Afghanistan, targeting Pakistan, but there is a very comfort design coming from China and India. In my understanding, in my approach, I think the Chinese and the Indians, they need to take over a regional approach. If the Indian NSA can talk with Afghan Taliban that they should be, Afghan territory must not be used against any country in the region. How come Pakistan, India, and other countries in the region
But,
cannot
but,
talk?
but sir,
You know,
Pakistan has
but
invited China into your territory. The
so
Indians
so
have
that
not
is
called the
another point.
Chinese there.
So so is
Pakistanis have called the CPEC project is not run by the region.
it's
It
not.
is enabled by Pakistan. The
This
Baluchis
is
have
another thing.
targeted.
But the
The
terrorist
Baluch people have
organizations are
targeted.
hiding in Afghanistan, being sponsored by the Indians, and obviously the Afghans are letting them operate in their own territory. So this is the question. So the question is, don't be selfish at the moment. They will hunt down you. They will target India as well. They can target anyone. The Americans, Europeans, everybody have condemned other than I think India. So I think this Indian attitude of being so selfish, okay, this is happening in Pakistan
Dr.
and the people
Chima,
are dying. That's and
Dr.
that's not
Chima,
that's something that's
Dr.
not coming
Chima.
from the largest democracy on earth.
Okay, I will get my panel to respond to that, but I will say only one thing to you: that when I hear the word Quetta as an Indian, who do you think I think of? Name a person you think I might think of when I hear Quetta. You're a very smart and senior journalist.
So
I think
it's
of,
up to you.
no, who
It's
do
up
I
to
think
you.
of? No,
I don't
because
know.
I
What do you
think,
think?
sir, when Indians think of Pakistan, they think of Masood Azhar and Hafiz Saeed. When they
Oh,
think
so
of
this is
terrorist
we
hideouts,
have been
one minute,
hearing this
one minute.
this we
It's
have
not
been hearing these
drama.
rhetorics for long.
Let's not
Come
be
with something
disrespectful.
new.
Okay, Dr. Chima, my only point to you, with great respect, is I don't want to have a moment of Schadenfreude saying this is Pakistan's policy of patronizing terrorism that has come to bite it in its back. I am simply saying that the empathy you expect from the world today, you are saying, no, ki regional response hona chahiye. That response maybe is not coming because of Pakistan's own patronage of groups like the Lashkar and the Jaish. That's the only point. But I take your point to our panel. Let me get the panel to respond. You have said China and India have been selfish. Before I come to our, General Hasnain and Ambassador Raghavan, Hakeem, you were explaining to me why CPEC has been targeted by the BLA. Why is China being targeted? Because Dr. Chima is saying China is also being selfish. Hakeem
Well,
sir.
this is a very, yeah, thank you very much. This is a very interesting point that the very first time I am seeing a Pakistani panelist is lashing out at China. Maybe everything is not hunky-dory there, but China has provided billions of dollars to Pakistan. China has, for us, and as I mentioned yesterday, the Baloch has, we don't have a problem with anyone coming in Balochistan and investing, but that investment would be with the consent of Balochistan. Now, at the minute, China is acting as a partner in crime with Pakistan. Now, I also want to mention that Mr. Chima also said that these organization might attack India and everyone else. No, we are not going to attack. Those organizations are not going to attack, or the Baloch are not going to fight anyone who is not coming over to their land and they're occupying their land. Pakistan is an occupation force. We never been part of Pakistan historically. Balochistan was never part of the subcontinent, and instead of blaming India and then is expecting empathy, it is like in the children fights, a children beat the other children, and when you see the parents, he start crying just to gain empathy. It's not going to work that way. You mentioned Lashkar. There are many groups. Mr. Chima mentioned Afghanistan, who were harboring terrorism in Afghanistan. The life of the Afghan people is in miseries because of who? It was the Pakistan who, trained thousands
Yeah.
or thousand people in the name of Islam. So the Baloch are fighting for their freedom, and their targets are very much set and clear.
Okay, Dr. Chima, you have to hold on because your points need to be taken to Ambassador Raghavan and General Hasnain. Now, Ambassador Raghavan, not to get into the kind of typical tutu meme that Indians and Pakistanis get into sometimes in conversations like this, let me try and go deeper into the subject. Pakistan is in a position where it wants the world to recognize what has happened as an act of terror. General Hasnain even likened it to October 7th, which is the Hamas attack in Israel on October 7th. The point is, because of Pakistan's essential schizophrenia, where Pakistan is both a victim and a perpetrator of terrorism, this is a very complex it's a complex situation. And also the same Afghan Taliban, once considered very close to the Pakistanis, today nothing is well between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And of course, Dr. Chima has called us and the Chinese selfish. Calling us what he has is no surprise for Indians who've long watched Pakistan. The comments of China are indeed intriguing. How do you respond to everything you've heard so far?
Well, this is it's an old kind of situation. Point is that the question which Pakistan has to ask itself is why is there not greater empathy from those whom it wants empathy? And the answer you have already given, that Pakistan's own complicity in using terrorism as an instrument of policy has severely jaundiced opinion, not just in India, but in many parts of the world. People have become very, very cynical about Pakistan. And unless it introspects and does some serious course correction and goes back to the drawing board, I don't see any change in this situation. The problem is that although this is a very serious escalation in current trends of terrorism and insurgency in Pakistan, it is not going to change the situation very radically. In a broader sense, this is one more, although very significant, it is one more tactical development.
But for
Real
example, Ambassador Raghavan, sorry to interrupt you, but for example, if a moving train can be taken hijack, really think of the Gwadar port, think of multiple other high-profile projects that are in this region. If I were China, I would be saying today, I want my own troops on the ground here. That undercuts Pakistan's sovereignty, that raises questions for India. I understand what you're saying, that not much will change. But think of how many targets might suddenly seem vulnerable that didn't seem possible before.
Well, if you look at the history of Pakistan in the last 20 years, it's astonishing what kind of terrorist attacks have taken place and what kind of installations have been targeted, and yet nothing has changed. Uh, this lack of introspection and the lack of serious rejigging of a existing approach, which has been so very counterproductive for Pakistan, is really quite enigmatic as far as most observers of Pakistan. That why is there no real change in the policy approaches they have been following? And until the point is that unless that happens, unless Pakistan's interlocutors and Pakistan's neighbors are convinced that there is some change of heart, I don't see this situation of allegations and counter allegations, but the situation more or less continuing as it has. That situation continues.
So you don't believe that Pakistan is in danger of balkanization? I want to take that point to General Hasnain also, but you don't think this is not a tipping point?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
General Hasnain, what does this do to the Pakistani military? I was reminded yesterday of when Osama bin Laden was taken out by the Americans. There was a brief moment when the civilian parties of Pakistan felt that they could actually take on the military. And I remember Yusuf Gilani, who was then the Prime Minister of Pakistan, called the ISI a state within a state. Much has happened since then. What does this do to the authority of the Pakistan military?
Barkha, very good question. Let me first of all start by just explaining to Chima Saab that he's asking us to speak to the Afghan Taliban. I mean, this is something which was unimaginable. That
Yeah,
the nation which created the Afghan Taliban, you are asking your neighbor to speak to them.
yeah.
Uh, the moment 31st of August or the 16th of August when 2021, when the Americans left and the Taliban came to power, who visited them first? The DGISI, the famous DGISI, who visited them with elaborate photography, etc., at that time. We are only building bridges back with Afghanistan, with the traditional kind of bridges that we have always had with the Afghan people, with the Afghan leadership. So that's one side. The second thing, this commentary on the Pakistan Army. I think, Barkha, you have to go to Dubai, from the airport, sit in a taxi which has got a Pakistani driver. And if that driver happens to be from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or those areas, get into a conversation with him. That's my hobby. I love it. The kind of information which I pick up from them, they tell me, Saab, kisi na kis tarah rehm khao. Our homes have been bombed. Aircraft have been used. Helicopter gunships have been used. Artillery guns have been used. Have we in India ever even looked at our insurgency areas with this kind of weaponry? Or anywhere in the world, how many people do this? I sometimes wonder. My mind goes back immediately while we are discussing this to 16th of December 2014 or maybe 15, I can't recall, the famous attack on the Army Public School, 139, unfortunately 139 young children who were killed in that attack along with a number of teachers. The Pakistan Army responded immediately. 1/3 of the Pakistan Army was deployed for counterinsurgency duties, IS duties all over Pakistan. And then there was no remorse. It's just the way to handle insurgencies or even terror anywhere. I mean, just look across the side and see how we have handled it. Barkha and I have been very deeply involved in discussing what is called the Hearts Doctrine in Kashmir. We would love to explain it to Pakistan, our friends in Pakistan. How do you deal with insurgency? There are two parallel tracks. One is a military track and the other is the humanitarian track. What do you ever do on the humanitarian track? I've never heard of the Pakistan Army talking about what it has done in Balochistan in terms of the outreach to the people. Have you done anything like that ever? All you have done is pick up an AK-47 and fire. If you do that, then this is what you are going to get in response.
Yeah.
I'd
So
like
we
to
have to start
respond, I
winding
think.
up. Yeah, Dr. Chima, I had a question for you, actually, if I may. I was very intrigued. I think all of us we are not so surprised. That there's a certain amount of lashing out at India. It is to be expected. We've all been in this deja vu moment before, and Ambassador Raghavan advises us to not get into those arguments, and I'm going to take his advice. My question to you is, why did you say China is being selfish? I was very curious about that comment from you, and you didn't elaborate on it.
Well, let me tell you. Let me first respond to Janahata. You know what he said that what this China-Pakistan economic corridor, this billions of dollars of investment in Balochistan. Don't you think this is an investment in Balochistan or the people of Balochistan? And otherwise, there have been many projects. There is a lot of financial devolution of power is there. So the provinces are getting the due share as per the constitution is concerned. This is no point. Coming to if I will speak to the Kashmiris or people from Manipur and Dubai, if they are there, they will tell us many stories what Indians have been doing. So we have a lot of stories to explain to each other what's going on in these areas. Now, coming to what you are saying, Barkha, in my understanding, when we talk about China and India, my sense is not we are not don't want to get support from anyone. We are able enough how to deal with the terrorist organization. When it comes to a regional approach, this is an approach which NSA Doval came up when he gathered the regional NSAs to have a conversation that how to engage with the new nature of a state which is in Afghanistan, the new nature of state where the Taliban in power and they are fighting with each other over many things. For example, a section of Taliban say that we should give women education, and section says we shouldn't give women education. So these kind of Taliban, they have a different approach to the state, different approach to the neighborhood, different approach to the militant organizations. Remember, the TTP and many organizations fought with these Taliban against the Western forces who have been there. So they're trying to save their own case against the Islamic State and many other things. So what I'm asking,
Why
China,
has China
Pakistan,
been
India,
selfish?
Iran, Listen, China, India, Iran, Pakistan, Iran, Central Asian countries, Russia, they need to have that kind of approach where everybody needs to talk. So China is doing business in Afghanistan. When you go for a business, and even that's where a question for the regional powers, that's where outside, the
Okay.
external powers will come in. Americans will come up with the Indians, Chinese, Russians,
Okay.
Iran, and Central Asians will not
Let me
speak.
let
So
me let,
then
let,
this
let me
is a
get
question.
Yeah, okay. Let me get Hakeem Baloch to respond, and then we have to take final comments from Ambassador Raghavan and General Hassan. Hakeem साहब, अब क्या होगा? मुझे बताइए आगे क्या होगा? Can
Uh,
we unmute
thank
Hakeem
you.
साहब? Yeah, but
Yeah.
आप
जी, जी। तो एक बात जो चीमा साहब ने की, वो कह रहे हैं कि बलूचिस्तान में चाइना की इन्वेस्टमेंट भी है, तो मतलब पैसे भी चाइना दे, सिक्योरिटी भी चाइना दे। और एक बहुत सारी बातें हैं जो एक एक चीज़ क्लियर करना चाहता हूँ, जो इम्पैक्ट होगा वो अटैक का माइट बी समथिंग सिमिलर टू अक्टूबर 7th, लेकिन वन थिंग व्हिच वी मस्ट रिमेंबर दैट द बीएलए हैज़ रिलीज़्ड एवरी सिविलियन on the very moment they conducted the attack. And जैसे कि मैंने कहा था, वो उनके टारगेट भी नहीं थे as a hostages. So this is a very difference between the attacks. But yeah, the impact for the Pakistan of this attack was as similar as October 7th. आगे पाकिस्तानी स्टेट पे डिपेंड करता है कि वो क्या करेंगे। अभी कल जैसे DGISPR का जो स्टेटमेंट था कि द रूल ऑफ द गेम हैज चेंज्ड, आपने कहा कि
जी
सरदार अख्तर खान मंगल ने कहा है कि वो न्यूक्लियर अटैक करना चाहें तो बलोचों को रोक सकते हैं, अदरवाइज बलोच विल रेजिस्ट। पाकिस्तान ने अपने 200 से अबव मिलिट्री पर्सनल को मारने के लिए छोड़ दिया, लेकिन वो जो है प्रिजनर एक्सचेंज नहीं करना चाहते। वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस यस्टरडे एंड आई टोल्ड यू दैट कि पाकिस्तानी माइंडसेट, पाकिस्तानी मेंटलिटी एज अ स्टेट ये है कि वो जो है negotiations पे believe नहीं करते, so they have to, whether they like it or not, whether the China will force them, whether the international power will in a way ask them to that you have to behave। अभी जैसे कि चीमा साहब ने कहा कि दुनिया ने इस अटैक को कंडेम किया, ऑफ कोर्स जहाँ पे मिलिटेंसी होगी, जहाँ पे जो है अटैक होंगे, उसके बाद कंडेमनेशन भी आते हैं, वो एक नॉर्म है जिस तरह डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशंस होते हैं, लेकिन दैट डज नॉट मीन कि बलूच अपने स्ट्रगल से पीछे हटेंगे। बलूच आर गोइंग टू गिव अप, नो, द वॉर विल कंटिन्यू until the Pakistani state changes attitude towards the Baloch।
Okay, General Hasnain, as I said, there are competing narratives here, but one important qualification to your October 7th analogy is that the Hamas actually went into the kibbutz and targeted women and children. And since then, there is a global debate about, Israel's response, and I won't get into that. But I take Hakeem's point that the BLA insists that it release the women and children, and several civilians, especially those who were from Balochistan, and we have passenger testimonies saying that. But this point that Pakistan may have left its soldiers to die, those who are still in the custody of the BLA, the Pakistan Army says none are. So these are competing narratives. We don't know. I remember Kargil, where they didn't own up to their soldiers who had been sent in to fight, right? You remember Kargil. We all remember Kargil. So there's a kind of what is it called, the fog of war situation here. There's a lot we don't know. What's the first thing that you would be looking out for in the next couple of weeks or months?
Barkha, first of all, very correct on this issue. Observation on October 7th is absolutely spot on. There was a difference. My comparison I was drawing was not on the aspect of casualties, humanitarian aspects, etc. It was on the enormity of the event. That it was an enormous event, and October the 7th was an enormous event. This event in the history of terrorism in Pakistan, of insurgency in Pakistan, is also an enormous event, which is, I think, a parallel to what happened on 16th of December 2014. So this is something that needs to be kept in mind. Secondly, I just would like to tell Chima Sahab, all this that you've spoken about in Balochistan, the investments, etc., very good, no doubt, delegation of powers and all. But from my military point of view, when I look at all this, I call this transactional. This is all transactional, right? You can keep doing all this, but unless you do this with a transformational effect on the people of that place, no one is going to be with you. Let me tell you, no one is going to be with you at all. You have to reach out and be with the people. That's the only way it will happen. Now, to your question, Barkha, what will happen in the near future? I would assess that the Pakistan Army may want to go back to an Operation Zarb-e-Azb kind of an operation once again. You remember Zarb-e-Azb, which lasted for the better part of 4 years almost.
Yeah.
The Pakistan Army has boasted about it and said that we have wiped out terror from Pakistan, etc. And then you see what exactly has happened, right? So this is something which they may just come back with the second Zarb-e-Azb 2 or something like that, and they are going to come back with all guns shooting, with all weapons shooting at that time. Now, that approach in the beginning itself is something which is going to put off the people, the objective areas in Balochistan, and this problem is going to become even more serious than what it is at the moment. Now, this is a repeated mistake which most security forces around the world do. This is exactly what the Israelis have done in Gaza. To think that you have won in Gaza, I mean, that's a different debate, but to think that you have won in Gaza after killing 50,000 people, obviously a generation or 2 generations later, this whole problem is going to come back to you again. So if you really want to put an end to it, my advice to the Pakistan Army is, yes, go in shooting if you want from a military point of view, but at the same time, balance it with a different approach towards terrorism. You may come out with better results.
Ambassador Raghavan, the last word to you. The sense of the region as a pretty unstable, volatile, unpredictable place is something that India will have to be alert to. We are engaging cautiously engaging the Taliban as part of the larger engagement with the people of Afghanistan. There are tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan. We have a cautious rapprochement with China at a time when Trump has made the world an unpredictable place. Pakistan's lashing out at India today, its foreign office lashing out at India and Afghanistan today, may be par for the course. But for those in India concerned about Pakistan-backed terrorism, there's a lot to look out for. As somebody who has spent your life kind of looking at this region, what would be your red flags right now, Ambassador Raghavan? Last word to you.
Red flags, because a major terrorist incident like this always creates benchmarks and standards and has a ripple effect, and therefore it is something which obviously we will have to take into account in our own future national security planning. The other red flag is yes, the significant deterioration in the security situation in our overall region, and there is an approximation between the situation to our northeast and that in our northwest. That's a significant factor which we need to take into account. But I think from the point of view of this discussion, I agree with General Hasnain that Pakistan has to rethink a securitized response to every difficult situation it faces. But for us on the outside, the real question is the one which we have been posing to ourselves for 20 years, that when is Pakistan going to realize that this dual role it has, being both victim and perpetrator, how long will it continue with that? To that, there's no easy answer, because the external forces cannot make Pakistan choose a different path. Pakistanis themselves have to choose that path, and that is really the significant sign which we in the neighborhood have to look for.
Absolutely, that essential schizophrenia, as I would call it, is it has defined the Pakistani state. The hapless images of people who have been victims of terrorism and then patronage of terrorism on a parallel track. It is a kind of bipolar security policy which is inexplicable, and we leave it there because I don't want to start another round of hostilities with Dr. Chima from across the border. So we will say thank you at this point to Dr. Chima. In any case, it is time, I think, for iftar for a lot of people. So I know Dr. Chima was on limited time, and we let you go. Kim Baloch Saab, thank you. To you too, General Hasnain, thank you. Ambassador Raghavan, thank you very much, all of you. Take care. See you soon. Thank you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust judgment.